Hello and welcome to part 2 of this video series. In this series we're going to be taking your base mesh and we're going to be using modifiers to help us turn this into a high poly mesh. So we want to use a tool called subdivision surface, and essentially what this does, it smooths out our mesh. So I don't need you to add it right now, but I'll just go over the context that is behind it. So if I get a cube, again, I don't need you to do this either. And if I just add some edges, there we go. So I click on the blue wrench, I press add modifier, subdivision surface. Now I just crank that number up a little bit. So what is happening? So right now, what's happening is it's taking this vertex up here and this vertex here, and they are essentially our endpoints. And this vertex that's in the middle, all this vertex is responsible for is controlling the actual curve. So you can see if I highlight it and pull it, that it's changing the actual curve direction. So subdivision surface is essentially smoothing out our geometry how we have it currently. So the issue is, what if you don't want your curve to be this big? What if you want like a really tight curve, like here for example, or a really, really tight curve? Or maybe you want the curve to start high but finish quite low. So the way we do this, we basically insert edges closer to this middle point here. So if I was to press Alt and C to get a loop cut and pull this down, we can see that it's controlling how extreme that curve is actually being portrayed. So if I do it quite close to this edge, and the same with this one, you can ignore the little mess up, that's just modify. There we go. We can see we get a much tighter result. If I was to take this curve here and pull it up and pull this one back a tiny bit, you can see my curve starts here, but it's ending a lot shorter. So the word for this is, the two words that I hear a lot is either fencing lines or reinforcing edges. I tend to use reinforcing edges. I think it makes more sense, but fencing line works the same. So we want to apply the same to our actual point itself. So I delete that and rubble that out. So right now, if I was to add a subdivision surface and crank this up, we can see that it turns our coin into like a mint looking thing. But if I was to double click on this edge, so 2 on the keyboard and double click and bevel it, so Control B, bevel, and then in the bottom left I'll get this little button. If I turn segments to 2, I've literally got the exact same thing that I just demonstrated. So I've got the middle edge that is demonstrating how big the curve is, and I've got the 2 edges next to it that are controlling how much it's actually going to curve. So now when I smooth it, this one will look better than the other ones. We can see that it's kind of pinching more, like so. So to start with, we want to do that around our entire mesh. So if you press 2 on your keyboard to go into edge mode, hold shift and just double click on all of them vertical edges. So make sure you hold shift so it selects multiple, and then we're going to bevel them. So Control B, bevel. In the bottom left, I click on bevel and I'll change segments to 2. And with the subdivision surface on, we can see that we're getting that outer shape. So just making it look a little bit nicer than what it was originally. So the next issue we have, so the way we turn subdivision surface off, by the way, is we just click on the little monitor, so we can kind of flick between how it looks with it on and off. The next issue we have, our curve here, when I smooth it, we can see it's actually turning it into a torus E shape. So we don't want that either. So we want another reinforcing edge that runs around the top of our model and the bottom of our model. So I double click it, hold shift, double click on the bottom one, and I'm going to bevel these ones as well. So if you have watched my last video, you will notice that this bevel is not perfect. It should be a 45 degree type of bevel as opposed to it being swashed. So the reason for this is we need to apply the rotation and scale. So because I scaled it in object mode, we can see on the right hand side the scale for the X is 1, the scale for the Y is 1, but the scale for the Z is 0.289. If I go into object mode and click on my coin, object, apply, rotation scale. And we can now see that all these values are all 1. So now when I bevel in edit mode, you can see my bevel is a lot nicer. So I'm going to exaggerate this bevel a little bit just because I want it to catch the light more. So the bigger the bevel is when it's in real time. When the light's coming down, you're going to get a nice highlight on these bits here. Whereas if you've got quite a small bevel, you'll still get highlight, but it'll be very minimal. So, and obviously if it's a coin, your camera's going to be quite far away anyway. So we exaggerate that a little bit. Like so. And then if we crank this up to 1, turn it on, and we can see we're starting to get that hard outer edge. So I think the issue that we are currently facing is that the bevel is too soft on this section here. So a different way we can approach it, I can bevel it. So I just undone it. I can bevel. And then these two edges that have been created, if I do the bottom ones as well, so I hold and shift, if I bevel them as well, and then I add that 2 segments, so now when I do it, you can see we've got a lot harsher edges. They're not so soft. Then it's literally just a case of repeating the same process on this inside edge. So I'm going to click on both in edge mode, I'm going to bevel them, do a big bevel, gonna click. Another thing you should take into account, it's quite nice to have bevels that are not completely uniform all the way around. So this bevel on the outside is quite big. If I do the bevel on the inside slightly smaller, it just adds that extra bit of variety. So now when I bevel, it's looking better again. So each edge that we have so far, we have the one that controls the curve, and we have the 2 reinforcing edges on either side. So again here, the one that controls the curve, reinforcing edge, reinforcing edge. Here as well, this one is the curve, reinforcing edge, reinforcing edge. So all I'm doing, I'm just going around and I'm making sure that all of my edges are reinforced. So the main issue that we now have is that this middle bit looks absolutely disgusting. And the question that you probably have is, okay, I can put an edge here, but how do I put an edge on this big bit in the middle? So the trick is, we want to do a loop cut. So Alt and C on the keyboard, and we want to click and drag it down so it's near this bottom part. And to get an edge on the inside, we want to do an inset again. So I press 3 for face, I click on that inside face, I press I, click my mouse in, pull it towards. So now when I smooth it, we can see we've got quite a nice shape. And I'll just repeat the process on the bottom. So edge mode, Alt and C for loop cut, pull it up, face mode, click on that big face, press I, pull it in. If I turn the monitor on, then bevel these edges. There we go. So it's starting to get an okay looking coin. We started kind of defining the edges. So I think the concept on the Pure Ref, the nice thing is the fact that not all the edges are the same length. Like there's a bit of variety in terms of how it's kind of done. So what we're gonna do, if we go to the top view, so I can see my coin flat on in orthographic. So mine is on the Z. And in vertice mode, so I'm going to press 1. I want to click over the first lot of vertices basically on the corner. And on the left hand side, so fourth icon from bottom, if you click and hold, there's one called vertex slide. So what it's going to do is going to slide the vertices along the normal of the edge. So I'm just going to pull it down a little bit. Then I'll select the next line. And I'll pull that down a little bit. Next one, pull that down a little bit. And I'm just going to work my way around the coin and just repeat this process, just to get a bit of variety. If you end up selecting a vertex you don't want, you can either hold Control, click and drag, or you can hold Shift and click. But the issue is, because I'm using X-ray mode, if I'm just clicking, I'm only selecting one vertex, so we can see I've clicked, but I'm actually selecting the vertex on the bottom. So it's important that you're clicking and dragging, going into vertex slide, slide it, go to the next one, slide it, to the next one, slide it. And I come up here, just mess this one up a little bit, slide, slide, slide. So I'm just going around, it's giving it a bit of variation as opposed to all looking so uniform. Hopefully it'll look a bit nicer. I'm going to make quite a long edge on this one. Don't really like that bit. Do it again. So once we've done the outside, we can do the same for the inside. So if I click and drag over them and I try and slide them, we can see that I've got a vertex here that isn't actually sliding. So two reasons this could be happening. First reason could be that our face kind of ends with nothing. So realistically, we want to do something called a pole. So all a pole is, it's all of these vertices right now have just created a massive n-gon. So an n-gon is a face that has more than 4 sides, basically, or 4 vertices. So this n-gon. So if you think we've got 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, etc., it's quite a big n-gon. So if I click on the top face and the bottom face by holding Shift, and I press I, suck it in. So I don't actually care how it looks, to be honest, because we're going to collapse them. Then if I press Tab and type in collapse, it's going to collapse them like so. If you've got an issue where it's collapsing them together, just click on the top one on its own, press I for inset, pinch it in, tab, collapse. And same on the bottom. So I, pull it in, collapse. And it'll fix it. I've also noticed that I've got an issue here, but I actually quite like that issue. So I might keep it. I don't like that issue. That was a lie. So if you get issues like that, just vertex slide, pull it back to where it was. So this one will be lined up with this bit here. Cross a little bit. That hasn't got to be perfect, it's going to be tiny. So if I try that again, hopefully the edge slide works now. If not, it's the second issue. Okay, so the edge slide is still going a little bit wacky. So in extra mode, all I'm going to do, select on the 2 that are not following, and then I'll just drag them along. Like so. Drag that one along. It's going to take you a little bit longer for the inside. Just Blender being a bit strange, in my opinion. But that's fine. So again, we're just going through trying to create variety as opposed to it all being quite uniform across the board. The borders down. Pull that down, pull that down. And it doesn't have to be perfectly lined up either. Because if you're doing them little imperfections, when it comes to sculpting, it's just extra storytelling that you're adding. I do this one. Pull it. I'm messing it up even more than it already was. So I'm going to do quite a long edge on this one. So I'll go the opposite direction. Click and pull it down. The one that isn't following. Okay. Go to the next one. Select more. Edge slide. Put it down. to the next one, put it down. So the last one's probably a little bit too extreme. So most important bit that I don't show you in videos is you can mess up. It is fine. Most of 3D is all about kind of prototyping, seeing how things actually flow, and if it doesn't flow right, it's the thrill of having Control Z to undo. Yeah, so maybe something like that's quite cool. So we've got some nice variety in there. Beautiful. So I think for now we will just do a coin that doesn't have anything in the middle, purely because it gives us opportunity to sculpt, and then after we sculpt, if it still looks it still looks plain, and then we will go back in and we'll add something in the middle to make it slightly cooler. So let's recap what we've covered so far. In this video, we looked at how we can use edge loops to generate fencing lines to help us use subdivision surface to create our high poly model. In the next video, we're going to be looking at how we can use sculpting to add damage and wear and tear to our object to offer more creative storytelling opportunities. Thanks for watching. If you want access to this series before anyone else, as well as project files, polls, and creator challenges, please check out our Patreon. Thank you to our subscribers. We'll see you next time.